Good morning, Vietnam. Welcome to the 420th episode of the Horrific Gentleman podcast, High on Expression. Today we're going to be talking about a Supreme Court case, more specifically the case of Morse v. Frederick. But before I give you more details, here's a quick word from our sponsor. This episode of the Horrific Gentleman podcast is brought to you by the Give Homeless People Exotic Animals initiative. Have you ever seen a poor soul on the street panhandling and thought, I know exactly what they need? Because we're here to tell you, we know exactly what you're thinking. And if you go to ghpeai.com, you can execute on your philanthropic wishes. For 16 small payments of just $119.99, you can buy these impoverished souls a zebra, an ostrich, or perhaps an elephant. Just scan the QR code on screen now and make your selection. Remember folks, that's ghpeai.com, where we put smiles on faces and give poor people animals they don't need, want, nor could possibly take care of. Thank you, and that's all. Back to the podcast. Wow, that's very touching. I'll personally be donating my local panhandler a lion, but we need to get back to the matter at hand. I'm joined by my guest, Jack Barber.
Hello.
B-A-R-B-E-R. He knows a lot about this kind of stuff. He's a pretty educated guy.
Thank you.
Into civics and whatnot. So why don't you tell us about the case?
Morse vs. Frederick?
Yeah, it's the one where...
Okay, I got you. Yeah, I did some research. Morse vs. Frederick. So on January 24th, 2002, high school student Joseph Frederick attended a school event. Students were allowed out of class to watch the 2002 Winter Olympic torch pass by. Frederick, however...
And this ended up on television, by the way.
Yeah, this was caught on camera. He revealed a sign that read, "Bong hits for Jesus."
That's bad.
That is bad. So his principal, Deborah Morse, suspended him for 10 days as she argued it promoted drug use against the school policy.
Deborah Morse sounds like a sock-dologizing old sourpuss.
She is. So much so that Frederick filed a civil case against Morse and the school board, claiming that his First Amendment rights had been violated.
Absolute legend.
So he went to the District Court of the District of Alaska.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah, so the district court actually found that his First Amendment rights had not been violated and that Morse had the right to suspend him as his sign had violated the school's policies on drug prevention.
So they upheld his suspension?
Yes.
And that's interesting because it kind of clashes with the ruling of Tinker v. Des Moines, which protected students' freedom of expression. Although I guess it's a different context.
I mean, it's all the First Amendment. It's actually pretty similar because the central question for both cases is how the First Amendment applies to students,
right.
Be it freedom of speech or expression, and if the school can constitutionally impose policies that restrict that. In this case, the anti-drug policy, and if it can constitutionally restrict his right to express his enthusiasm for cannabis.
Right, so didn't the Ninth Circuit reverse the court's decision?
They did. The panel unanimously thought the ruling was bogus.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm going to read a quote from Judge Andrew Kleinfeld. Here's what he said. The question comes down to whether a school may, in the absence of concern about disruption of educational activities, punish and censor non-disruptive off-campus speech by students during school-authorized activities because the speech promotes a social message contrary to the one favored by the school. The answer under controlling long-existing precedent is plainly no.
So his argument was that Bong hits for Jesus was a social message, and the school could not censor it simply because they disagreed with it.
Pretty much. So the school board petitioned the Supreme Court and asked them to review the Ninth Circuit's decision.
I mean, they really must not have much going on if they're this petty.
Oh, definitely.
So what arguments did either side make? Because I could make a pretty good argument.
Well, Frederick's side claimed that the school's authority did not extend to the sidewalk that Frederick was standing on as it was off campus.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
They also, of course, cited Tinker v. Des Moines and a couple other similar cases. And it goes without saying that, they cited the First Amendment.
How did Morse's lawyers argue against that?
Well, they argued that in contrast with Tinker v. Des Moines, the sign was a disruptive and provocative statement. Oh no.
And a sign is different from an armband.
Yeah, and that's really what won the case for Morse. In fact, a lot of the oral arguments mentioned Tinker v. Des Moines, and that's really the big thing. Morse's side was able to differentiate this case from Tinker, mainly because the message was so provocative and presented so much differently.
So, what was the ruling?
Well, it was 5-4 in favor of Morse.
Oh, that's closer than I would have thought.
Yeah, the dissenters largely just restated a lot of Frederick's arguments, especially the one of the First Amendment. They claimed that it should have protected him. They also argued that even if his sign was promoting illegal drug use, that doesn't mean censorship is justified.
I just realized this happened in 2007.
I know exactly what you're going to say. Yes, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was in fact a dissenter.
Wow, that says a lot.
Yeah, it kind of does seem like some of their arguments are rooted in their beliefs on marijuana. One actually mentioned the futility of prohibition as a sort of comparison.
Yeah, I was researching the case. Strangely enough, it doesn't look like it garnered a whole lot of media attention. It is, however, it's sort of a cult classic in regards to Supreme Court cases.
Yeah, I think a lot more of the media's attention was focused on the incident itself, like the sign and whatnot.
Well, funnily enough, I have a story about how this relates to me.
Oh, really?
So I'm not going to mention dates or names, but it was a year after 2007. in which I made the mistake of going to a school-sponsored spring carnival.
Did you hold up a sign that said "Bong hits for Jesus"?
No, but I was wearing a shirt. Again, I'm not going to get into specifics, but it basically had a bunch of album covers of various artists on this shirt. Among them was an artist known for his enjoyment of recreational marijuana. It was fairly visible, not really like the focal point of the shirt, but you could see it fairly easily.
I have a feeling I know who you're talking about.
You definitely do. But when I was confronted by an older lady who didn't even work with the school, I'd never seen her before. She was a chaperone or something. She was very vocally offended by what she perceived as a shirt that contained drug-related themes. Not even drug promotion, just the themes of drug use.
Were you suspended?
Well, no, but the lady, she must have really been on a power trip. She escorted me to the front office. She was real upset with me. There were children at this event. How dare I wear a shirt with such a message?
She sounds like fun.
Yeah, so I was asked to either leave or change. I just left. I didn't see it as worth it. Either way, I received an official demerit, or the elementary school equivalent, which fortunately doesn't actually follow you beyond graduation. It's not like a write-up. But thanks to the ruling of Frederick versus Morse, that demerit was legitimately imposed and haunted me for the remaining couple months of my elementary school career.
That's ridiculous. And that goes to show like how much this case has impacted people.
To be fair, it's a very specific example, but the ruling spawned a lot of debate about marijuana in general. It was kind of seen as an extension of its prohibition, but honestly, other than that, it hasn't necessarily had a huge impact since it was such a specific situation. It really seems like because of this case, students lost some of their First Amendment protections.
Hypothetically, it would make it easier for schools to crack down on drug-related messages in general. Not that the issue of drugs in schools stems from kids holding up provocative signs.
But if they ever do, they have the constitutional right to censor and punish them. And unfortunately, it looks like we're out of time. We're going to have to end this episode. Special thanks once again to our guest.
Yep, no problem.
I'll see y'all later for our 421st episode next Saturday. Good night, Saigon.